Souse us, therefore, in the powdering tub of thy mercy.
that we may be tripes fit for the heavenly table,
Welcome, Meatsmiths. You are listening to a Meatsmith harvest
restoring husbandry to prosperity.
by the means of the traditions of our fathers.
This dialogue picks up where we left off in our last episode's conversation. You can find part 1 on our website, YouTube, or iTunes. If the content resonates with you, please consider supporting our team by going to patreon.com/Meatsmith and donating a small monthly pledge. This goes directly toward more free media headed your way. Thanks for staying tuned for part 2.
Yeah, so one of our Meatsmith members, he
Okay.
has a drake. His name is Olympus. He's huge, and they love him. This is the other thing.
Okay.
Affection can give these extraneous creatures that serve no objective purpose on the farm. Affection of the farmers.
They become like an icon on the farm almost.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they don't actually serve a practical purpose.
Right.
They end up serving a symbolic one,
Yes.
and which is interesting. I get that.
It's not nothing, too.
It's not nothing.
It's the personal aspect of being a homestead.
It is, but
Yeah.
it is definitely a monkey wrench in the
Sure.
well-oiled machine of the farm.
Yes.
I find.
Are we keeping him for economic reasons or just for the happy factor?
Yeah, right. And the happy factor is not nothing.
Yeah.
But in my 10 plus years of slaughtering animals on many farms, the happy factor can devolve. It can dominate a lot.
Yeah.
You just got to make sure that's not
That's
your
true.
primary management goal. And
Yeah. It's a means, not the end.
yeah, and it's
Like, are we working for him or is he working for us?
Yes.
Even the emotional part, I mean,
Mhm.
like the kids sometimes have bonded with certain animals, but then sometimes it like gets really,
yeah.
this isn't actually helping. I mean, it can in certain stages and then we
Mhm.
have to like outgrow it, but
It can be, I think, at least for children and with all humans, that bond is fleeting,
yes, this is true.
right?
It's an infatuation.
It can be fleeting, whereas management is more of an act of the intellect, and so
Yeah.
it can become a habit and more long lasting.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned, the possibility of just killing him and composting him, and at least for this drake, we'll definitely harvest him. But there are circumstances wherein it might be difficult to acknowledge, but utterly necessary, that for the tranquility of order on the farm, an animal just has to go.
Yeah.
And I would say even if you're, especially if you're not ready to handle the harvest.
Mm-hmm.
So did we talk about the fence jumping cow on this
To
podcast?
make good use of the harvest.
Yeah. Or was that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, and it's, it all depends on the gravity of the assault on the order of the farm.
Well,
Because some
yeah.
are less costly.
That's
like
right.
This drake, it is less costly, but he does make it difficult for me to treat the geese
Mhm.
as a group of geese
Right.
that I can manage better
Mhm.
by getting them more regularly to fresh grass.
Mhm.
He screws that up
Yeah.
because he's messed up their order.
Mm-hmm.
And he follows him, but then he harasses them,
Mhm.
and he doesn't obey fences the same way they do.
Mm.
And so, all in a not in a grave way, but the geese do suffer, which means
Yeah.
the grass does a little bit.
Mm.
But you go up the scale, and you can get some really horrible consequences
Mhm.
of an animal that fitteth not in the order or in the fence.
Mhm.
And we got these beautiful Longhorns that we're harvesting for the class, which is actually great. When we harvest these big cows for the beef classes, we've got 2 this blimp. They are, if you can harvest these cows, you can do anything.
Yeah.
Because they're big and they're
true.
mature. They're
Yeah.
3, just under 3 years or 3 years old. And that means that everything is a little more stout Everything's tougher. And these are hardy cows.
Mm-hmm.
So unknitting them in the harvest requires more precision for it not to be a muscle game. Whereas a younger, softer cow, he kind of comes apart a little easier when you're harvesting. You're removing his cannon bones and his hide. So there's a little more room for error. So this will be, it's a good, if you can harvest Longhorns, you can harvest anything. But as far as precision goes. And so when we got these 3 cows delivered for the class, raised beautifully, all grass fed, their meat is going to be incredible. Because that's the other thing about Longhorns is they're so delicious. And even though they look kind of gaunt, they actually do have a nice little fat cap. It's just the shape of their skeleton that makes them look tall and lean and gaunt. But we got these 3 delivered, and we put them in a holding pen. It's a very elaborate strategy to maintain the tranquility of order, because the cost of an errant, enormous bovine with 5-foot horns is high. The cost to order is incalculable.
If they get out, it's
my goodness,
the damage that could be done to other people's properties and
to Highway 51.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're all right on a highway.
Yeah. And I've done this. I've harvested cows that have totaled cars before.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and I don't remember. This is why, in any breeding program or in any prospective cow acquisition, temperament, that's like number 1. That is top of the list. And oddly enough, it's not, when you get an even, calm, phlegmatic cow with a good temperament, who's docile, you're not just getting a peaceful animal. It correlates with other things. Like in bulls, a calm bull, he usually has more testosterone. So he's more fertile.
Right.
And consequently, being a more masculine bull, they tend to be calmer.
Yeah.
It's the bulls that lack masculinity. They're antsy.
Yeah.
And they're fast twitch, and they're anxious. But the masculine bulls with huge shoulders, they look like they're front end heavy. Big shoulders, huge neck. They look very masculine. They do not have wide hips. They'll have a full rump, but not very wide. A big gut. These masculine bulls are calm. Yeah. They're peaceful. Yeah. They're not compensating for any lack in themselves. So they're just calm. But so to when we got so I was talking about how I have harvested animals out of ditches that have totaled cars. Yeah. And one of them was a cow actually purchased by my parents that were going to turn into a milking cow.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was like, 9:30 p.m. or something. Yeah. And my dad called me and he's like, "Can you harvest our cow out of a ditch?" Because immediately, and you can see this on the farm if you're acquiring a cow. The source farm, if you happen to be there while they're loading it. But this cow, immediately upon being pulled up to the new pasture, even where there were other cows, head up, eyes wide, ears forward. This is not a calm cow. They open the door of the trailer and, without skipping a beat, slow beats, it happens slow. But this cow just they do this, not full sprint, but this high-legged trot thing, where they have inertia. The inertia has begun.
Yeah, it does look like a horse trotting.
It kind of does.
You don't see it that often.
Yeah, they're picking up their feet.
Yeah.
And this cow just went straight to the fence and cleared it immediately. Immediately upon being unloaded.
Yes, right.
And this was a hard fence. Yeah. And then immediately ran down the road, and then immediately ran onto the highway, and then immediately got blasted by a sedan driven by a vegan and his son. Because this is Vashon Island. Totaled the car. And they could skip away on the car, and they did. The the cow went into a ditch on the side of the road that was probably 7 feet deep, and right on the side of the highway, couldn't get out. And the poor people that ran into this cow just drove home. I think they wanted nothing to do with it.
Wow.
And, limping home in the car. They were fine, but the car was totaled. And so I drove there in my box truck, but not before several attempts were made at shooting this cow unsuccessfully. So here's the problem: is usually in situations like this, police officers are going to be on the scene.
They have to get involved, yeah.
And they'll try to put with goodwill, they will try to put the cow out of its misery. But the thing is, they're trained for shooting center of mass.
Yeah.
That's as an officer, you are not trained for like bullseye shooting, right? For hitting the little one tiny little spot. They're trained for center of mass.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, that's what they do to cows.
Was not the best marksmanship.
And this is, I've heard this told in stories several times, and I've experienced it directly. Police officers, they just shoot the cow in the head several times with their 9mm, and not aiming for what we as slaughtermen know you need to aim for, the brain.
The golf ball size.
It's brain or nothing. And on a cow, it is 3 inches above the level of the eyes. And so he's just shooting this poor thing, and it's not dying. Very common. And my dad calls me and he's like, tell me how to shoot this cow, because we have put several rounds and this cow is not dead. So I told him. He was able to do it.
Okay.
And then he got the sticking cut. And so by the time I got there, the cow was finally dead. And I had to harvest it out of a ditch. The crane on my truck made it possible. Yeah. But it was a big mess. We still got a harvest. I skinned it and gutted it right there. I might have just left the guts there. I can't remember what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Might have just left everything there on the side of the highway. But got the carcass in there. And the reason it couldn't get out of the ditch was because its femur was snapped.
Oh, wow.
The biggest bone.
Wow.
Yeah, which you wouldn't think, but it was clean snapped.
Wow.
Yeah. And that had to have been from the impact of the car. Because I can't, it's so high up too on the hip. I was really surprised that it was that bone and not like a lower leg bone, but snapped femur. So that's the kind of disaster we're talking about. Yeah.
And that's going through your mind a little bit when these cows show up here and one of the cows was doing its trot.
Yes.
You're seeing, this is where this could go.
Right. Yes.
At least that's what happened in my mind.
Yeah. Well, and so because I knew that, so we got them delivered. They were relatively calm. We put them in a smaller pen where they're sharing a fence line with the steers we already had, which is good because you want them to see, this is a place that we can develop a herd, so that at least they're distracted by ordering their herd rather than finding forage on the other side of your fence. Because they don't see a fence line and read it like a text, right? Like a book that means, here's the symbol that a fence means. It means I am inside a pasture. That they don't make that connection. It's just a physical barrier that they are insufficiently motivated to get over. They could. Yeah. But if you keep them happy and healthy and fed, they won't. Unless you have a cow who has the fence jumping gene. And then they just do it for fun. And they don't need a lot of motivation. I would say it's just like, it's a little greener over there. Whoop, right over. Yeah. And you're like, wait a minute. That was a tall fence. And you just walked over it and you didn't even notice. Because they can physically.
We've seen it.
They can definitely do it. The fence is just a mental barrier. It's not actually a physical barrier.
The whole idea of the cow jumping over the moon. It seems impossible, but actually they do jump very spryly, like a deer, even though they're huge. It's like this weird thing that they still have the ability to jump high.
They do. Yeah. It's remarkable. And it's that inertia, too, that just makes it's like a freight train once it starts.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we unloaded them. They spent the night in their smaller paddock. And then the next day, I let them out within the perimeter fence in a smaller paddock of hot wire. 4,000 volts. It's hot. Mm-hmm. And which they had been raised with, like the same poly braid wire. Like it all looked the same as their home farm, what they were used to. And this cow was just like, oh, that's cute. And like a gazelle, he just cleared it. Like not even a thought. Yeah. It was just boing, and he's over. And when I saw that, I said, Wallace, go shut the gate to Highway 51. Yeah. Because he was still within the perimeter fence, but I was like, when he has the over the fence eye, when he has an eye for that, there's really no fence as a barrier to him. Once you have a fence clearing cow, even though it was an electric fence, it was a little shorter still. And so Wallace was running and he shut the gate. And I could tell he was looking over the perimeter fence. Like, oh, that'd be fun too. Yeah. And immediately I just went and got my gun. Yeah. Immediately. Yeah. Which I recommend to all people because even if you're unprepared for a cow slaughter, let's say, maybe your knife isn't sharp yet, you did not anticipate it, you don't have the gambrel set up, you don't have a hanging apparatus, shooting that cow and bleeding it out, and then struggling, working through your lack of preparation and taking your time to harvest this cow is a lesser struggle, is a lesser disaster than that cow just clearing fences at will whenever he wants, indefinitely. So always pick the dead cow over the fence jumping cow. Always. Yes. It seems like, oh, this is rash, this is, I'm not prepared, I'm not ready for this. No. It's like, no. At least the challenge is defined. You know what it is. I have to get this meat into a cooler by tonight. You can do that. It's going to be hard. It's going to wreck your day. I'm kind of set up for it all the time, so it didn't wreck my day, but you can make it happen. It's going to be a challenge. But if that cow is not dead, there is no horizon to the chaos. Literally. You can't imagine the things that could go wrong. Yeah. It's terrible. Yeah.
The boar's head in hand bear I, bedecked with bays and rosemary.
How many people do you know who are building their home culture around seasonal harvest and feasting? Or that are hunting as you are for self-sufficiency and back-to-the-land values? Or that share your artist's passion for human-scale meatcraft? At farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we've created a community of hundreds of omnivores from around the world with these shared goals, and 2 major places for them to learn from and inspire one another. First, we have our semi-annual hands-on educational event, The Family Pig, here at our Heartland homestead in Oklahoma. Come meet Brandon, get your elbows greasy, and over the course of 3 days, kill, cut, cure, and cook 2 pigs completely. You'll rub those greasy elbows with other meatsmiths from around the country, sharing meals and conversations to inspire you for years to come. Secondly, for more remote learning, over at farmsteadmeatsmith.com, we host a purely digital membership program with an archive of film and textual resources 5 years deep now. And both our on-site classes and online program include access to our most unique and rewarding private community Facebook page, Meatsmith Table, which is the only international network by and for homesteaders harvesting animals on a domestic scale using traditional and regional methods. We've been told that our classes are life-changing and the membership program unparalleled in quality and quantity. To get a taste of our education, search farmsteadmeatsmith.com and our YouTube channel for our free films, conversations, and downloads. Explore how we and other meatsmiths across the globe may best come alongside you and support you in building your home around the harvest. Please head to farmsteadmeatsmith.com today.
So always shoot the fence jumping cow immediately.
Yeah.
I say.
Yeah. I think you have the right to say that. You've been through enough at this point, and you've seen it go wrong enough. Mm-hmm. Well, and I have to say, too, once you made that decision, the day got infinitely better.
Yes.
Like immediately. You did have to skin that cow. It was a tough hide, and you skinned it with a French boning knife. That was right. That was the only sharp one you had.
Yeah.
And, it takes an hour to sharpen a knife well. So you didn't have that time. But beyond that, from my perspective, everything went well. The kids were all into it. The farmer who brought the cow, he was totally a part of it. His dad was there too.
Yeah, it was great to have them there.
Yeah, it was good. He pitched in, and what he did was he helped lead the boys. You couldn't focus on it, but he helped lead the boys in harvesting the horns.
The glorious horns, yeah. And
that's a whole story in itself too.
Yeah.
Do you want to share that?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we harvested him, and that cow, now that carcass has been hanging for 30 days.
Yeah.
And we're going to butcher him for the beef class.
That's right.
And he looks great. He's wonderful.
So we needed to harvest one anyway.
We did. I didn't anticipate it that day. I was going to only let it hang for 2 weeks. Just because a slightly more moist carcass is easier to cut. And I want to make things a little easier for first-time students who are cutting. But they're going to get the experience of cutting a more dried down 30-day aged carcass. It's got some mold on it. It's all beautiful. So it works out because they'll be able to see, dryness and mold is fine. See? It's also super delicious. It actually tastes way better. So,
but anyway.
Yeah, it was good to have the shepherds there because Brian was also able to whisper because he knows his cows very well.
That's right.
He's a cow whisperer.
Yeah.
He knows them. And he could gently and very strategically and artfully, never running. You can always tell a skilled stockman, there's no chasing, there's no wasted effort. Because through hard experience, you have learned the utter futility of chasing a herding animal. Never. It does nothing. Or trying to push them from behind, right? No coercion. It's all persuasion. And seizing upon their appetites, you lead them. And he could do that so artfully, and he got that white cow into a smaller pen, which is great, which is an assertion of humility. You always want to shoot your cows in a small pen, just in case the shot is bad. And it's easy to shoot a cow, actually, and it's very unlikely, well, it should be. It's common, unfortunately. But it's unlikely that you'll miss because they are so slow moving. You can always, as long as you shoot 3.5 inches, 4 inches above the level of the eyes, you'll hit brain. And they don't move a lot, so it's easy to get. But even today, after shooting hundreds of cows, I still put them in a kill pen. Because you just don't want to be prideful about that. And so we got him in there, and I was able to shoot him, and it all went well. And then he helped the boys cut off, because this cow had, we put his head in the front end loader of our tractor, and it's a 5-foot front end loader, 60 inches, actually. And the tips were touching the ends of the front end loader, of the horns. And so the boys, with Mr. Shepherd, were able to cut off the horns, and then we boiled them in my pig scalder, and we could only fit one horn in at a time.
So we cut both of them off together on the skull. So it was still a 2-horn scenario. So they could only dunk one side in at a time. Yeah. Because it was still 5 feet long.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we boiled it. Wallace boiled it. And it took 2 tanks of propane.
Wow.
Because you're making stock, you're just melting collagen into gelatin. And then we just played tug of war. We got the horn out. The boys held on one side. I held onto the boiled horn.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And you just got to twist and pull, and then it pops off.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. And because it has a bony and fleshy core.
Mm-hmm.
But the carotenoidinous, I don't know the word, but the hair-like horn structure is on the outside. And that comes off when you boil it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And then Wallace continued to work on it. And he salted the inside of it. Because there's still some soft tissue in there. And it basically desiccates it, dries it out. I don't know if he really cleaned the inside of it. That was kind
He used a scratcher, like a metal scratcher, to kind of scratch out, get as far in as he could.
Yeah.
So it's a little fibrous now on the inside, a little, but it's not gross. It's not rotted.
Yeah.
It's just not smooth.
Yeah.
You know? Although they're sanding it occasionally when they get the motivation to do that. They sand the outside and I think the inside. And that really makes it pretty and smooth.
Yeah.
And then I keep telling him, you should oil it. You know, they're like, well, we're not done sanding it. You know? Like I want to glisten it up a little bit. Because then you can actually like make it ornate. You can go all fancy if you want. But then they cut off the very tip to expose the hole.
Yes.
And then
sand that a little bit.
Only thing left to do after that is to blow in it.
Yeah, so he made a winding horn.
Yeah.
Or a shofar.
Okay, yeah.
And it's got an amazing tone.
Yeah.
And it took him some practice, you know, to get the proper way to blow, like through a trumpet. It's kind of, it's one of those.
Yeah.
But you get better and better at it.
Yeah.
And he's gotten pretty good at it. And so consequently, they found, you know, like a ram horn partially rotted in the compost pile and a seashell.
Yeah.
Almost the size of a conch shell, but not quite. That we had from Vashon, and they've turned those into horns as well. But the Longhorn shofar is definitely the deepest tone, and it's middle C.
Yeah. Yeah,
because they'll figure out the note on the piano, and then the shell is, I think it's a third. It's a major third above. It's an E.
Oh.
And so they actually blow in harmony. If you blow them together.
I think it's a G.
Is it a G? Okay, so it's a fifth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is also harmony.
Yeah.
And it sounds good.
Yeah.
And so it was great. And so Wallace was able to take this shofar recently, this horn, on a pilgrimage.
The timing was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked out. You got to use the horns on a longhorn.
Yeah.
They are so glorious.
Yeah.
They're so terrifying when the cow is a baddie. But once he's dead, they're so awesome.
Yeah.
And you got to use them somehow. There's too much awesome there.
Yeah.
And so he went on a pilgrimage, a 35-mile pilgrimage to Clear Creek Abbey, which ended with a solemn pontifical high mass with Cardinal Burke. And it was glorious and wonderful. We met him the last mile. With all the babies. Met Wallace.
Not Cardinal Burke.
Right, not Cardinal Burke. We met Wallace for the last mile.
Yeah.
And the Mass.
Did you say the name of it? Sorry, Three Hearts Pilgrimage.
It's a Three Hearts Pilgrimage. Yeah.
We'll link to that.
Yeah.
It's an incredible experience. It's very, very family friendly as a pilgrimage. They go to great lengths to make this doable for families.
Yes.
I mean, I'm pregnant. You have a bum knee. We couldn't do more than a mile, the very last mile. But people fly out from all over the country and now from all over the world, starting to. It's building. It's actually...
Like 5 years old, maybe?
It's about 5 years, and it's growing exponentially. It's very powerful in different ways. And so this year we thought we can send our oldest. That's what we can do. And he did. He packed up his tent and he packed up his shofar. And he led his chapter in blowing the horn every time they, departed from the next leg of the trip.
Yeah.
And everyone loved it. It was very invigorating. Yeah, it just really helped set a good tone. In fact, some of the kids were like, "Can I buy another horn from you?"
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we can put a price on that. But yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And the sound really carries.
Yes.
It's really neat. So he would start them out every time they left the campsite, I think.
Yeah.
And he did have a moment that he described to us where there's one long, torturous hill that's part of the pilgrimage route. That is, it's a pitted, gravelly road. So it's hard to walk on an incline, especially when you've already gone, 20 miles.
Yeah.
And there's one particular steep part. And he and our priest, Father Mundatu Chandale, and another young man, they got to the base of that and they decided to run up the hill. And in a triumph of having conquered the hill, when they got to the top, Wallace winded his horn. And it was great. It was wonderful to see him get back and with a big grin on his face. And he said, it's he was never tired because you walk. You're never really tired. You're just, your legs are in pain. That's what it is.
Yeah, for him.
That's the nature of the pain. And it was great. I'm really glad we brought the shofar.
Well, and we kept talking because there was 2 horns, and that was the one that got done first.
Right.
They salted it first, and the other one was like a week or so behind. So while Wallace was gone, and I told the kids, we're going to go too, but we're going to go on the last mile. I was trying to keep it a secret.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, Simon, go get the other horn and make sure it's ready.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? And so he got that one ready, and he started blowing it. And so we brought it, and when we were meeting Wallace at the gate to the monastery, which is like the last leg of the trip.
The finish line. Yeah.
Then him and Johnny, I think Johnny was blowing the shell. Simon was blowing the other horn, and kind of bringing all of the pilgrims in. And it was a wonderful moment. People were like, clapping. They loved, they were feeling the energy. We were trying to fuel them with more energy. And it was, for us, at least in our little vantage point and our little contribution, it was.
Yeah, because that was the end. That was the finish line for them.
Yeah.
The gates of the monastery.
Yeah. It was a good experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much better use of a horn on a fence jumping cow is the shofar than what he might use it for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
So we're putting that cow to good use.
Yes.
All of that to say, harvest. Harvest your fence jumping animals.
Yeah.
Do it. I mean, farmers that are real earnest, like Greg Judy and a lot of these guys, one of the things that, if they have a breeding program, one of the things that they cull is the fence jumpers.
Yeah.
Because some sheep, they won't respect the hot wire. Others will respect that hot wire just 12 inches off the ground.
Yeah.
They'll never breach it.
Yeah.
You just got to cull the ones that jump it and eat them. And it's totally essential. That's why I like the word cull. It's like, it involves more than just kill, but it means to select out. It's more intentional. There's more of a reason for the cull. We are picking that guy out.
Yeah.
He is our special choice because he doth fences jump. So especially he needs to go. We're not just and he'll become food. We're not just getting rid of him.
Yeah.
It's a cull.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Meatsmiths, for listening to our take on all things meat making, householding, and culture keeping. We hope it's helped you in growing your home around the harvest.